Greetings, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. It is just random that I started off a video like this. I like opening old crystals to get free shards. I need to do the Brian Grant challenge again of 1 million premiums. It's not the funnest thing to do or to watch, but it's just good data. And I'm always about good data, even after 6 years of doing this. So, speaking of good data, there are a lot of champs in the game right now that are just the definition of mid. They're champions that are not great. They're champions that are not terrible. They're just in the middle. And these are champions that you're just never going to see in Battlegrounds. And that can describe most champions in this game. So it's not like that really narrows it down at all. But in terms of champions that I feel like even after some version of buffs, still just don't get much play, this guy. 6-star, now 660 for me, Electro. Now, if Electro got removed from the game today, and no one said a word, how long would it take for you to notice? I don't know if I would ever notice, because I genuinely don't think of Electro in any capacity on a daily, weekly, monthly, or even yearly basis. With that being said, we have ourselves a video submission entry from one of our old channel favorites, speaking of somebody who feels like they've been with me for 6+ years. And that is the legend RSA Growl, who has cooked up for the channel a Champion Spotlight Electro rework. And let's just say that that is an exciting thing to touch on, especially when you're in between whale holidays. About Electro, Max Down was just an electrical engineer doing his job, but a lightning strike jolted him into the menacing supervillain known as Electro. The ability to command up to 10 million volts of electricity, deliver lethal shocks, or shoot lightning, he has become an infamous criminal and adversary to Spider-Man. He is still science, of course. Wouldn't it be weird if the class changed of a champion that was getting buffed? I still can't explain Karnak's class design. I know they wanted to kind of introduce it, but it just didn't work. But now whoever ranks up Karnak just gets screwed over. Sorry, Sawyer, if you're watching this. Strengths, passive shocks. Remember, he makes an entry to the contest with shockingly great buff, classic upgraded shock damage along with electrical potential, which grants him a boatload of utility. He stores up to 10 million volts. Electro shocks are now passive effects, meaning that pesky purify effects cannot mitigate his damage. Shocking, isn't it? Now, I love a good pun, and I love that he put the pun in the champion deep dive. He's buff immune. Electro is also buff immune, allowing him not only to counter classic mystic tactics, but also amp up his electric potential each time he's immune to one. Now, weaknesses, he has Infuriate, Intimidate, or Taunt. These 3 effects no doubt make him a huge threat on defense, but they really mess up with his electric potential storage and thus mess up his offensive capability. But that is different than, say, my big question is, let's say I think of the counters that I use against Electro, like Kingpin or Nick Fury. Is this buff going to make them worse against him? We'll see. Opponents who are immune to shock will counter Electro's damage, although his utility will still remain intact. So if they're shock immune, he's still got some value. Electro is immune to shock buffs and passive ability accuracy modification unless otherwise stated. Electro's shocks are passive and deal 13,750 damage over 8 seconds. That is a lot. That is a whole lot. Good luck using Archangel against him. You'll be shocked to learn that Electro is now much more menacing on defense. Now, this is the kind of buff that Kabam would lick its chops at, because that kind of defender does make it harder to count on traditional God tier and beyond God tier offensive battlegrounds weapons, such as, of course, Archangel. Electro builds up to 10 million volts electricity, building up at a rate of 1 million volts every 3 seconds. As he builds up in voltage, gain the following piece of utility. 3 million, gain an indefinite true strike. 5 million, gain gloam padding, allowing Electro to root opponents in place for 3 seconds. Screw that. 7 million Electro's lightning disrupts brain signals, infecting concussion, reducing ability accuracy against metal opponents. Concussion lasts for 12 seconds. And then that final 10 million goal, Electro gains a voltage overload passive for 20 seconds, while active opponents near Electro take 740 shock damage per tick. Once voltage overload ends, Electro loses all 10 million volts, dealing a burst of 5,000 damage for every 1 million volts he loses. What? That's a lot of damage if he's at 10 million. That's 50,000? If he is struck with a heavy attack while on voltage overload, he loses all volts without the opponent taking damage. While suffering from Infuriate, Intimidate, or Taunt, voltage overload remains active indefinitely, but he gains losing a million volts of electricity every second. Each time Electro gains an effect he is immune to, gain 1 million volts of electricity. Each time Electro is struck, he loses 1 million volts of electricity. The 1 million, it kind of reminds me of like Austin Powers, where you're like, what's this going to be? 1 million volts. I don't know if that part of this buff concept is variable or negotiable. Part of me wants it to be, and part of me doesn't. By the way, all of Electro's burst bypass shock immunity. That's kind of scary. It's Electro's main source of utility and defensive power. Note that Electro's burst bypass shock immunity, but not his shock effects. Also, voltage overload will taunt him to lose voltage only if suffering from Infuriate, Intimidate, or Taunt. So it is a very niche counter to him, which I think would be the point. Heavy attacks once per fight. This attack consumes 5 million volts of electricity, activating Shinzo Massage. While Shinzo Massage? Not Shinzo? Shinzo? While Shinzo Massage is active, heals 30% of max health over 5 seconds. So he's also got healing, somehow. He did repair his teeth, his broken teeth, in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So, maybe that's how. This attack is the key to Electro's shockingly good sustainability. Note that this attack only consumes electricity if Electro is at or below 70% of max health. 1 million volt electric discharge. This attack consumes 1 million volts of electricity to inflict a shock effect. Note, simple and shockingly effect. Effective damage dealer. This attack consumes 5 million volts of electricity, inflicting a shock effect for each million volts of electricity consumed while active. Electro's attacks bypass miss. And the special 3, this attack increases Electro's max voltage to 20 million. That seems crazy, because then the burst damage would be 100,000. That expends it all, inflicting a shock effect for every 1 million volts. Again, that could be 100,000 damage based off of the numbers. And then Sig ability, each time the opponent is immune to a shock effect, Electro instead gains a precision passive, increasing critical rating by 5% for 12 seconds. Use this intro ability in tandem with the special 3 to deal guaranteed critical hit damage against shock immune opponents. This is Electro's main damage source. Crazy, shockingly OP ticks of damage are ready for you with this attack. Also, how many of you noticed I named all of Electro's specials after some of the techniques of his favorite villain of One Piece? I mean, that's, again, pretty cool. Synergy bonus, we got Classic Spider-Man, where Electro gains 1 million volts of electricity. Has a 20% chance to also grant an unblockable effect. Spider-Man gets a 10% Fury effect. Partners in Crime, Sinister 6, and the recommended masteries, Suicide/Recoil masteries, and Precision and Cruelty. So, all in all, I'm not saying, out of all of his buff concepts, of which there have been many, I'm not saying that I would support this immediately because defensive-wise it would be a nightmare. But man, would it be scary to see this version of Electro in the opponent's Battlegrounds rank 5 or even Ascended deck. Kind of makes you wonder why there isn't a 7-star Electro either. Probably because he's not that good right now. I don't hate Electro as it stands, but I am not impressed and don't think about him ever. Shout out to my man Ben Koala, who did say that I should not rush to end my videos at 5 minutes, as I usually do sometimes, because especially in the summer, sometimes people listen to these videos while they're walking around the house, doing work, or driving. So shout out to all you who listen to my videos in the background, catching about 1 every 3 words, and maybe getting or not getting my central point that I try to preach in these rants. RSA Growl, thank you for the Champion Spotlight rework. I love how much time you put into these. I am truly blessed to cover this on my channel. You're the best.